Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 831B, and today's date is December 1st, 2015, and the title of this episode is U.S. and the Western Coalition Forces are now bringing troops into Syria to push World War III. Now, before I get started, I just want to make an announcement. Tomorrow, which is going to be Wednesday, I'll be uploading an interview with Jim Fetzer. He wrote the book, Nobody Died at Sandy Hook, then it was banned from Amazon. We talk about Sandy Hook, we talk about gun control, and we talk about why his book was banned. If you're on the X22 Report email alert system, I will send you an email. If you signed up to the X22 Report Spotlight YouTube channel, YouTube should send you an email. If not, you can come right to YouTube, type in X22 Report Spotlight, bring you right to the video, or you can come over to the x22report.com site, scroll down a little bit, look over to your right, you'll see the video there, or you can go to newssentinel.com. You will see the video posted on that site. Let's get into the economic collapse, political and geopolitical news. Now, as we know, since the early 70s, and I've read many times how these global warming groups decide that, oh yes, it's global warming, this is going to be a problem. And they started back in 1970 because they knew this entire central bank system was only going to last 40 to 45 years. So they had to come up with a way that the people were going to pay for all this debt. So they came up with the scam of global warming to convince everyone that this is why you need a carbon tax. And of course, back in the 70s, they started that, we're going through a cold period. We're going to be seeing freezing temperatures. Through the 80s, they changed into global warming because what's happening is the sun changes what happens here on Earth. And ever since then, they've been using the mantra of global warming. And they're pushing this hard right now because, as Christine Lagarde said from the IMF, this would be a perfect time for a carbon tax because we could use this money to pay down the world debt. I mean, that just sums it up right there. And we know they're going to be doing a lot of different things to place taxes on the people. Because what they've done at this point is that this system is coming to an end. They need a way to basically get your wealth to pay down all of this debt. And they're going to come up with all different ways of doing it. One way is to place a 10% wealth tax on everyone. Another way is a carbon tax. So right now, the president is proposing more restrictions and regulations on the U.S. economy. He's going to destroy the coal industry in this country. He's going to make sure that there is no oil or gas production here in the United States. He's already pledged $3 billion in taxpayer funds to the UN Green's Climate Fund. And the Obama team will do everything it can to keep Congress from having any say in the matter whatsoever. This is why he's trying to make this agreement a treaty, because he doesn't want Congress involved in this. And we can see this is a huge, gigantic scam. They lie about everything else. They're also lying about this. And what's very interesting about this, since the Paris false flag event, France put up new laws, the State Emergency Acts, and during this summit, they got rid of those protesters that were protesting against the global warming agenda. They arrested them, and the police came out and shot tear gas at them. Those people who were for the agenda, they were allowed to protest. So there's no freedom, there's no democracy. Basically, it's a dictatorship. That's what we're seeing right now. Here in the United States, we are seeing that the U.S. government central bankers, with all their agencies, they are never, ever going to stop spying on the people. Since Obama issued his executive order 12333, basically, with that executive order, he has authorized the collection of Americans' data from foreign soil. So basically all they have to do, and they're saying this is legal, is go outside of the country, tap into the trunks, the system, and they can spy on the American people, and they're saying they're not violating any of the rights. That's basically what they're doing. And to take this even further, the FBI is doing something very interesting. thousands of national security letters are sent out annually. It doesn't need a judge sign off, and it's illegal to tell anyone you got one. And what does the letter say? Well, the FBI wants the web browsing history, the IP addresses of everyone corresponded with, all online purchases, and more. David Kravitz from Ars Technicas, he reports in detail of these secret letters because basically he went to court to find out what this is. And basically he found out that yes, the FBI has been asking for this information because the FBI has interpreted its NSL authority to encompass the websites we read, the web searches we conduct, the people we contact, the places where we go. This kind of data reveals the most intimate details of our personal lives, including our political activities, religious affiliations, private relationships, and even our private thoughts and beliefs. And we can see right now, they send these letters out to certain ISPs, to certain corporations, to gather this information, which is in complete violation of our Fourth Amendment. This government will never stop spying on the people. And when everyone says, oh, look, the NSA, they're no longer going to be spying on the people. The Patriot Act expired. It's going to the USA Freedom Act. All they're doing is transferring how the spying is being done to confuse everyone. So instead of the NSA spying with the Patriot Act, now they're going to have the corporations do it, and the corporations are just going to take that information and send it over to the government agencies. This way the government agencies can say, hey, we're not spying on you. It's legal for the corporations to do it because of the USA Freedom Act. So you can see how they're playing this entire thing right now. Now, NATO, they are bringing in Montenegro to join their alliance. They approved the bid to join the alliance, and we can see this is just another country in NATO's realm right now. NATO agrees to keep troops in Afghanistan. They're going to keep 12,000 and add more troops in Afghanistan. Plus, they want additional funds, about $350,000 more in Afghanistan, because as we know, the troops are never going to leave this area. It's a strategic location. There's a huge lithium mine. There's a copper mine. There's an oil pipeline that runs through Afghanistan. China, Russia are in Afghanistan. This area, and of course they grow the poppy fields, which they convert into opium and sell across the world to pay for their covert operations. The U.S. NATO forces will never leave this area, and we have proof now that they're never going to leave. I know Obama said they were leaving, but we can see whatever he says is always the opposite. In Ukraine, state of emergency in Crimea, even though Crimea is part of Russia right now, they are going to keep this state of emergency until the new year, because right now the power is still out. And until everything gets back to normal, that's when they'll get rid of the state of emergency. Now, what's very interesting about all this is the power has gone out. Activists are blocking repair crews from coming in and repairing it. We know it was sabotaged. And it seems like they're trying to strangle Crimea right now. Now, we understand the Minsk II ceasefire agreement expires at the end of this year. And they're going to have no power going through New Year's. Some places are on emergency generators. Other places have been hooked up so they can have limited power. But most of all, power is out. It seems this is the strategy that the U.S. uses most often. Like if we look in Syria, they knock out the power grid there. They bring down the power to strangle the population, to allow the United States and other forces to invade these areas. And this is what we are seeing right now. Ukraine says, listen, we will be the guarantor of food for Turkey because Russia is placing sanctions on Turkey. So Ukraine is ready to fill any gaps in the food market for the Turkish people and the Turkish government because of the Russian sanctions. And this is an area we need to watch because we're seeing things really start to ramp up in Ukraine. We're seeing Kiev bringing a lot of military assets to the contact line. Crimea is out of power. I mean, this seems like a complete setup. We know the troops have been trained by the U.S. and other countries. They trained the National Guard, the Armed Forces, and Special Op teams. We know that the defense bill has been passed. Ukraine is getting additional funds. They've been receiving lethal and defensive weapons. We're heading into a situation where we're going to see all-out war. Now, over the past couple of years, we've been seeing the U.S. bring military assets all over the world, and they use a little bit of a trick to get these military assets into these regions without everyone going, hey, why is all this being moved over there? A lot of times what they'll have is a war drill, a war exercise, and they will ship, tanks, artillery, everything over for this training mission. And once the training mission is over, they just leave it there, and they say it's going to remain in this area. Well, we're seeing the same thing happen in Europe, the European Activity Set program, where they were doing the European drills and training in this area. The equipment, which is about 1,200 units, including tanks, artillery, infantry, fighting vehicles. This equipment, which is stationed in Germany, is going to remain in this area, and it's going to be moved around for within the region for different training and exercises as needed. That's the key phrase right there, as needed. So basically what they're doing is they're pre-positioning the tanks, the artillery, and everything else for later on. Now, out in Libya, we understand the peace process is being pushed forward. They want peace. They want a unity government. And we know what that really means. That means they want the elected government, which is not controlled by the United States government central bankers, to step down. And they want the puppet government back into power. And they've been reporting that the Islamic State is basically setting up a new base in Libya. Of course, what we know what's happening here is Russia is defeating them in Syria. The U.S., Qatar, and other countries like Turkey are airlifting the Islamic State out and now putting them into Yemen and Libya. And they're hoping by doing this, the Libyan elected government and the Libyan puppet government will join forces to stop the Islamic State. Well, right now, the United States, since the Islamic State is now in Libya, which is the proxy army for the United States, is letting Italy know they're only 400 miles or so away from their country. Italy decided, you know something, we will work with the United States and we will work together in the next few weeks to make sure we can get the Libyan governments to form a national unity government. So this way, we don't have any problem with the Islamic State. And Italy now has been drawn in. And this is exactly what the United States wanted. And we can see right now, the elected government in Libya most likely will not form a unity government because they will lose all power. This is why they continually turn this down. Now, they are the official government because they are in Tripoli. The puppet government is really no longer the government. But if you notice, the Islamic State protects the oil fields. The Islamic State protects the central bank. Basically, they have their instructions to work with the puppet government. And sooner or later, when these talks break down, the U.S. will be going into Libya. We understand that Turkey has been shipping oil from Syria and Iraq, actually stealing oil, having convoys of trucks drive it into Turkey, then put onto different tankers and sent to other nations to be sold. Now, of course, it's a complete profit. They're selling it for like 50% less the going rate. And really what's happening here is Erdogan, the U.S., owes Syria and Iraq for all this oil, and it's turning out to be trillions of dollars worth. And Putin says that he has absolute proof that Turkey is involved in moving this oil. And the reason why Turkey decided to take out this plane, because this is where the convoys were crossing. And they were trying to protect what they were doing there. So what Putin is doing right now, he is slowly tormenting Erdogan with his corruption leaks. Now, of course, Erdogan will deny over and over. He already said he's going to be stepping down if Putin can prove it. And if Putin's saying something, we know he can prove it. But he wants to make him squirm. And basically, he's going to continually leak out a little bit of information each time to make Erdogan squirm. And eventually, when the time is right, of his choosing, he's going to put the kibosh on him. And he's going to release the information. We can see this is how he plays. This is how he works. He did it with the down Russian airliner, the Metrojet. He waited, and used it to his advantage. This is what he's doing right now. He's a chess player. So right now, we see Putin is putting the screws to Erdogan. Erdogan is sweating. And basically, he's going to make him suffer for what he did. Now, we see out in England, they are trying to push as hard as they possibly can the votes to bring in troops and jets into Syria. And we can see right now, Fallon is warning that on the eve of the votes, that the ISIS threat is intensifying. Of course, this is what they always do before the votes. They have to push this agenda to make everyone believe that this is a huge, huge threat to get the votes. Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn has accused Prime Minister David Cameron of bulldozing ahead with a vote on extending airstrikes from Iraq into Syria because his case for war is weak. Corbyn said Cameron's rush to hold the vote to concerns his case for war is falling apart. So what the U.S. government, central bankers, and the coalition forces are trying to do is they're trying to get into Syria. They need troops in there. And we see the UK is moving in this direction. We see NATO right now is going to augment Turkey's air defense and help them out. Stoltenberg says we are now addressing how we can continue to augment their air defenses of Turkey. We see Germany. They have approved operations by its troops against the Islamic State. They're going to be sending in 1,200 German troops. They'll have an aerial refueling aircraft, satellite reconnaissance. And of course, we know they're not going after the Islamic State. We see the United States now. They're bringing in expeditionary targeting forces to Iraq and Syria. These special operators will over time be able to conduct raids, free hostages, gather intelligence. Basically, they're going to be used to set up different situations in Syria where they can have their units move closer and closer to Assad, to set up the safe zone, to protect the border between Turkey and Syria, to open up the transit lines for their proxy army. This is what all these troops are for. And if they have these troops on the ground and they keep them around the Islamic State, guess what? It's going to make it harder and harder for Russia to bomb. Now, Obama is putting out the same warnings he did once before back in Ukraine. Obama warned Putin against intervening in Syria's civil war, suggesting that Putin is aware of the dangers his country faces by entering the bloody conflict, which is world war. And he brought up Afghanistan. He's saying it's fresh in Russia's memories. Well, Obama has it backwards this time. Russia is a powerhouse. Their economy is doing well. The United States right now is full of debt. The economy of the United States and the European nations is imploding. If we have this war in Syria, Putin and China will run down the United States and make the United States spend an enormous amount of money on this and basically destroy the economy completely. Remember, whatever Obama says is always the opposite. So Russia is not going to get bogged down. The United States will get bogged down. The tables have turned. Putin knows this. And he realizes that the U.S. coalition forces are pushing for World War III. Hopefully Putin can de-escalate the entire situation, but as we can see, the U.S. and the coalition forces will not stop. They will continually push this as hard as they possibly can to get the next war started. Why? Because the economy is collapsing. They cannot start the new system with this collapsing like this. They need everyone to go to war so they're completely distracted. And this way, when the war is over, they can say we need to start a completely new system because the old system will not work right now. And this is how they get around it. Now, of course, people say, what happens if this goes nuclear? Well, they do have bunkers. They will go underground. Will there be anything left? Some people say yes. Some people say no. In their minds, they do believe that they'll be able to emerge from their bunkers. When I say they, it's the central bankers, and they'll be able to start the system all over again. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.